If you encounter a triangle that isn't a right angled triangle, then you need to be thinking about either the sine rule or the cosine rule. But using the sine rule depends on you knowing at least one angle and the length of the side opposite that angle. In other words, you need an opposite pair of information. If the triangle doesn't qualify for the sine rule, then it's the cosine rule that you need. In the first triangle, I know an angle and I know the length opposite. I have an opposite pair of information, so I can use the sine rule. In the second triangle, I know an angle, but not its opposite length, and I know lengths, but not their opposite angles. I can't make an opposite pair of information, so I can't use the sine rule with this triangle. So it's going to be the cosine rule. So having decided it's the cosine rule, the first thing I'm going to do is write down the formula. And step 3 is to label the triangle, starting with the side or angle you are finding. Remember, lengths are lowercase, whereas angles are uppercase. And always start by labeling the side or angle you've been asked to find. In this case, we've been asked to find this side here, so we'll label it lowercase a. Opposite letters always match, so we'll label the opposite angle uppercase A. There's nothing to choose between the other two sides, so just choose one for B. And consequently, the opposite angle will be uppercase B. We'll label this side C, and the opposite angle will be uppercase C. Step 4. Using our diagram, we'll substitute our known values into the equation. Finally, we'll solve the equation. Actually, all we need to do is write the entire right-hand side of the equation exactly as it is here into the calculator, which will give us the value for a squared. Don't forget to square root the answer to get a. Here's another triangle. This time we're asked to find an unknown angle. It's not a right angle triangle, so it can't be SOHCAHTOA or Pythagoras, so I'm thinking of the sine rule or the cosine rule. But I need to know a side and its opposite angle to use the sine rule. But that doesn't exist here, so I'm left with the cosine rule. Having decided it's the cosine rule, write down the formula for the cosine rule. Step 3. Label the triangle, and remember you always start with the side or angle you're asked to find. Lengths are lowercase and angles are uppercase, and in this case we've been asked to find an angle, so we'll start labeling here, and so this is going to be uppercase A. Consequently, the opposite side will be lowercase a. And again, there's nothing to choose between these two sides, so I'll just label this length lowercase b. Consequently, the opposite angle is uppercase B, and this length lowercase c, and consequently the opposite angle is uppercase C. Step 4. Substitute your known values into the equation. Step 5. Solve the equation. Now, if you're going to have any difficulties at all with this topic, chances are it's going to be this step. The equation looks complicated, but let's do the easy things first. Let's change these squares into ordinary numbers. And why not just add these together? There's still something very easy we can do here. Instead of having 2 times 14 times 16, we'll actually multiply this number and we'll find it results in 448. So the equation is looking a lot more straightforward. Now we need the equation in this form. So ask yourself which terms are in the wrong place and eliminate those terms by carrying out the inverse. In other words, undo them. And remember, because this is an equation, we always do the same to both sides. So I can see this minus 448 cos A is in the wrong place. So I'm going to undo that or eliminate it by adding 448 cos A to both sides. Next, I can see this 225 is in the wrong place. So I'll undo that by subtracting 225 from both sides. And finally, or penultimately I should say, I'm going to divide both sides by 448. And so finally we've got an equation that you should be familiar with from SOHCAHTOA. And because it's an unknown angle, we're going to type in inverse cos into our calculator, write in this fraction, and you should find the value of the angle is 59.6 degrees. And there we have it. So by using a structured approach and using your knowledge of how to manipulate equations, we can hopefully make short work of this equation. And it's probably the most difficult of the sine and the cosine rule questions.